I've been testing a prompt where I give ChatGPT or Google Gemini details about my chart. So I'll say, okay, this is my type, this is my strategy, this is my authority, these are my profile lines, and this is my incarnation cross. Can you help me to create a calendar for my week using my energy, talents, and gifts in the best way possible? Then I will go a bit deeper and I'll say, here's a typical snapshot of what my week looks like. And I'll pop in a picture of my Google Calendar. Let me know based on what you're seeing where I can make adjustments to my work week.
Welcome to Authentic AI for Entrepreneurs, the podcast that shows you how to leverage the power of AI technology without wasting your time or selling your soul. Let's embrace making AI work for you. Hey, my human friend, and welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, Kinsey, and today, oh man, you are either going to nerd out with me so hard, or you may be like, wait, what the heck is Kinsey talking about? Because we are talking with Andi, a human design expert, and how we can use ChatGPT to not only help us better understand human design, but also understand how we can show up in a more aligned way in our businesses. I was so nerding out during this conversation, and for my human design nerds out there, I know you will as well. If you are not really into human design, or you're like, I don't even know what human design is, no worries. Human design is basically like if astrology and the Enneagram mixed. It's kind of a personality test, but way deeper than that. And it's really, really interesting, honestly, to learn about your human design, whether you believe in it or not, but really get curious about who you are and how you can show up in the best way in the world. And then that paired with ChatGPT and AI tools, wow. I think it's so cool. It's so nerdy for sure. And whether you're into human design or not, I think that you'll find a lot of really interesting insights about how we can use AI tools to better understand ourselves so that we can show up in our businesses in a more aligned way. So anyway, I'm going to stop yapping because I cannot wait to share this conversation with you. And if you enjoy it as much as I do, make sure that you share it with another business friend who could also use to listen to it. And while you're at it, why not leave us 5 stars or a friendly review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to us on, because it truly does help us to just keep spreading our authentic AI message. All right, let's go ahead and dive right in. Hi, Andi. Thank you so much for coming on Authentic AI for Entrepreneurs. I am so excited to have you on the show.
So happy to be here, Kinsey. Thanks for having me.
Yes, and I did already introduce you just a teensy bit in the intro, but I'd like to hear from you. Who are you and what do you do?
Sure. We're going to talk about human design. So I'll tell you my human design first. How about that?
It.
So
yes.
I'm a manifesting generator. For those that are new to human design, we'll talk a little bit more about what all of that means in just a little bit. My background is one in which I started in the corporate beauty world. I worked as a general manager for a group of salons and spas. I was a sales executive for a beauty brand. And I worked in marketing strategy right at the very beginning of when social media started to become a thing. So that was back in like 2010, 2011, 2012, when brands were just starting to get tuned into how to use social in business. And so I feel like I was a little bit on the forefront of that because I was working for a brand at that time. I have been an entrepreneur since about 2012. I started my first business in 2012 accidentally. I stumbled my way into entrepreneurship and have had quite a few businesses since. Now I run Wee Studio, which is an education company for female founders and creatives. We focus our work on mindset and also human design and AI and strategy for busy founders. And we also do some really fun things like retreats and in-person gatherings for the members of our community. And then I'm also building a beauty brand of my own right now. So I have a lot on the plate, but lots of fun and full manifesting generator fashion. I'm always up to something new. So that's a little bit about me.
Oh, so many amazing little nuggets there. I love so many different parts of your story. With our other podcast, Feel Good Social, I do always ask, like, how did you get started? What has your journey looked like? Because I think it's so interesting and so good for all of us to hear. It can look like lots of different things, and there can be lots of different things happening over time. And it doesn't matter if you feel like you have to pivot or feel like you're failing or feel like you want to go do something else at some point. Like all of those things can come together and build to create where you're at in your journey right now. And that'll continue into the future,
1000%.
I love this. Okay, so this podcast, however, is about AI, which I always geek out about whenever I have conversations with people about AI tools. I absolutely love that you're another woman in the kind of AI space and encouraging other women to use AI tools in different ways. How did you just start learning about AI and dipping your toes into that world?
Yeah, I was thinking about that the other day because now that ChatGPT is everywhere, it feels like we all have had this tool for forever. It feels a little to me like when the internet was really becoming available to us en masse, that there was like the time before the internet and then the time after when we all had access to these tools. And I feel a bit like our large language model tools have given us that before these tools and after these tools. But I think for the most part, most of us became aware of AI with the accessibility of Google, Gemini, and ChatGPT. And I was paying attention to AI before those tools became available, but I wasn't necessarily using it in my business because they just weren't readily available to most of us who are running small businesses. So the second that those tools became available, I was paying attention and I immediately began to experiment with those tools where there's that kind of adoption scale of there's folks that are on the innovator side of the scale and then your laggard side of the scale. I typically fall not all the way on the forefront of the innovators who are like the first one to get the new iPhone, the first ones that were on Facebook and Instagram. I'm not always the first. But when I see value in the potential of a new tool, I will experiment. I'm very much a person who's curious and interested and looking at ways to create more efficiencies in my life and in my business. I really found my way into using AI for my business when ChatGPT and Google Gemini were becoming readily available to us, and started using it for some of the basic things like copy editing and restructuring the things in my day-to-day that I could move over to a tool like a little robot assistant versus doing it myself. So it was really basic stuff at first. And as I started playing with it, I realized that there was so much more I could get out of it if I really learned how to use it properly, learned how to use it better. So that was really the start for me.
Yeah. Oh, I feel that so hard too. I know I was laughing the other day remember when people were calling AI like a trend? And I don't know, maybe there's still some people out there who think that, but I'm like, no, guys, this isn't like Clubhouse. Like, I was not a Clubhouse adopter. Everyone's like, you're not on Clubhouse. I was like, nah, but as soon as I I totally went through like a flip too, where at first I was total grumpy grandpa about AI tools. And then I was like, oh, wait, let's like turn toward these and learn more about them. And now I'm just trying to tell everyone we can be using these tools and also in an authentic way that aligns with us. Let's talk a little bit about human design, which is another pillar of what you do, and then maybe how you use that with ChatGPT, because I think that's so interesting. So I guess to kick it off, not everyone really understands what human design is. Can you give us a little brief overview?
Sure. They don't understand for very good reason because it's a very complex system. So I absolutely get that when people are like, what is this? Astrology? Is it genetics? What is this thing? And it is a combination of a lot of things. It combines elements from astrology, from the I Ching, from Kabbalah, from the chakra system, from genetic coding. And what it really offers us is a deeper look at our unique take on the world. It does that through identifying our talents, our gifts, our natural energetic makeup, the best approach for each of us in making decisions. That's the basics. I've heard it presented in a lot of ways where people have said it's like the science of your aura. And I would present it more as a system for understanding your highest talents and gifts, how you are energetically made up, and how you make the best decisions. Those three things is what you can really use it for in a practical way.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I love that approach too, because I'm like somewhat woo curious from like a logical standpoint is how I probably describe myself. So like I'm open to all these things. And at the same time, I'm always like, why? Wait, what? I'm definitely a head person in all of the different personality tests and different things for sure. So that's probably why. But I think that human design is really cool. And if you guys are listening right now and you are just, what is this? Get curious about it. One of the things that I've been loving too is actually using ChatGPT to help me understand like my chart a little bit better. Be like, wait, what does this mean? Or like anytime something pops up. And before I got a little bit into human design, probably like 2 or 3 years ago, when I started learning about it, but it's a lot to process. And then also finding the information that you're looking for, finding the answers to the questions you're looking for was like hard too. And so I recently got back into it. And I just put my chart I use the human design blueprint one. And then I just literally screenshotted my chart and I sent that screenshot to ChatGPT and it gave me an analysis. Then I did my husband's. I was like, how can we work together? How can our designs work together? Then, of course, my mom was visiting and I did our entire extended family because we had to know about all of our relatives. But anyway, that's how I started dipping my toes into like human design and then having ChatGPT help me along in the learning process. Like, what has it looked like for you using ChatGPT in conjunction with this?
Yeah, that's a really smart approach because ChatGPT, Google Gemini, these language models are getting smarter and better at analyzing human design all the time. I've been testing human design with AI from probably day 2 of using these tools. And at the beginning, it was a little suspect. I was like, they don't really know the things. And part of the reason for that is it's hard to find really good information about human design on the internet. There are a lot of words in human design that are hard to decipher. Someone who's studied human design for a long time, the best information is often in books, but you got to pull a bunch of different books to get the real good stuff. So it's not a system that's really easy to learn. And so I think if you're a robot, you're also going to struggle a little bit with like, what does all of this mean? Then there's different schools of thoughts and different camps on how to best interpret human design. So if you're like a real traditionalist around human design, you're leaning into Jovian Archive, which is the original system from Ra Uru, who's the founder of human design. If you're more on the Jenna Zoe, she's one of the bigger educators around human design. If you're more on her camp, she makes it feel a little she does a lot of deciphering of some of those original words. And then there's Karen Curry Parker, who's another big reader. She does the same thing. So there's these different styles of analysis that make it a little harder to know exactly what you're looking at. I think now we can really use AI to do a lot of exactly what you did with your chart and your husband's chart and your family to get more data on what exactly all of this means in your chart, because there's so much to look at in a chart. When you look at a human design chart, there's a body graph in the middle. And then you have these numbers on either side of the chart. They each mean something very specific. There are many of them. They all mean something. And then there's a planet connected to each of those numbers. They all mean something. And then you see on this body graph, there's these colored in blocks all through the body, what you would see on a chakra chart. That all means something. And then you have these lines running from these different chakra points on that graph, depending on the color of the lines. So there's a lot to know about on a chart. So a really great place to start is pulling your chart and doing that type of analysis to get some understanding of what exactly you're looking at. And then I would start after you do that by beginning to understand what some of those key components, your type, your strategy, your authority, and your profile lines, what those all represent on your chart. And then you can get super creative. You can look at how to be more productive and efficient, how to show up in your business from a marketing point of view, how to use human design in partnership with your content strategy in business, how to tap further into your creativity using your human design chart. So there's lots of things you can do, lots of great prompts that you could try to help you to really take human design and AI and bring those two tools together.
Do you want to create more Instagram Reels but get stuck on what to post? I hear you. That's why I'm excited to share our new free resource, the Reels Prompt Playbook for ChatGPT. This playbook includes 20 ready-to-use AI prompts for Reels, hooks, and captions, and makes it super easy to create trendy content that grabs attention without spending endless hours scrolling Instagram for inspiration. Whether you want to share behind the scenes, offer quick tips, or tap into the latest trends, the Reels Prompt Playbook has you covered. Download your free Reels Prompt Playbook at DIY with.ai/Reels. And the best part, these ChatGPT prompts are designed to work for entrepreneurs in any industry. Plus, you can pair these prompts with any trending audio or any video that you find on your phone. Basically, they're super easy, super quick, and will keep your content super authentic while saving you loads of time and headache. Grab your free playbook now at DIY with.ai/Reels and start showing up on Instagram consistently today. Yeah. Oh, and you know what I love that you're bringing up too, and I swear I probably say this on every podcast episode, is the fact that one of the best things we can do is really bring our expertise or our own knowledge to these tools, and also use like our critical thinking skills and really think through the answers it's giving me. Like, yes. And it's so funny. This completely applies to what I've been doing with human design in this past like 2 weeks with ChatGPT, is like, okay, I threw my chart in there. It gave me the great overview, very detailed. I was like learning that stuff. But then I started getting into listening to a few different human design podcasts. I'm like, oh, now I'm really curious about it. What are people saying about this stuff? And then these people on the podcast would bring up different aspects of the chart and all the different things. I'm like, wait, what is that? And then I go back to ChatGPT and I'd ask the question, and then it would give me more of a response. But it's always about, yes, these tools are awesome, but firstly, always realize that the answers it's giving you may not be like fully true or the full truth either, right?
Yeah.
And then also it's about understanding the right questions to ask these tools. And so that's where bringing like experts, bringing their expertise to these tools can be really magical, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. As you and I have been talking, I just popped ChatGPT open and popped my chart into it. And the first thing that came up for me, and I think this is a little bit of an education on how you could kind of like go through the flow of this. The first thing that popped up was, this is your human design chart. It's also known as a body graph. This is a combination of principles from astrology, the I Ching, Kabbalah, all those things that I had just mentioned. Then it's telling me basically the architecture of a chart. So it's like, here, these are your type. This is your type and your centers. This is your profile lines. This is your gates and channels. These are your defined versus undefined centers. This is your incarnation cross. This is your planets and your lines. Then it starts to go into specific analysis, but it's not saying a lot about me. And it actually, as I'm looking at it, has got a couple things wrong. It's saying I'm a 6-1 manifesting generator. I'm actually a 1-3 manifesting generator. Here's what I would do next. If this is what I got as the result, I would then take each of those points, the first one being types and centers. I would say, okay, based on what you're seeing on my chart, referencing my type first, which is manifesting generator, can you give me some education around the energy or the talents or the gifts? Think about what's important for you to know now of a manifesting generator so that I can apply this into my daily life. So I would get that information first. And then I would continue to work down and make sure that the information that I'm getting, perhaps I reflect back into some other resources that I have, perhaps books or podcasts or things like that, to make sure what I'm getting is right on. And then once you do that and have that basic knowledge, then you can get really creative in your prompts to get really juicy stuff. I've been testing a prompt for probably a year where I give ChatGPT or Google Gemini details about my chart. So I'll say, okay, this is my type, this is my strategy, this is my authority, these are my profile lines, and this is my incarnation cross. I will give it that information. So I'm being specific about my type is manifesting generator. What that means is X. My profile lines, I'm a 1-3. What that means is X. So having that information about me, plus looking at a picture of my chart, can you help me to create a calendar for my week using my energy, talents, and gifts in the best way possible? Then I will go a bit deeper and I'll say, here's a typical snapshot of what my week looks like. And I'll pop in a picture of my Google Calendar. Let me know based on what you're seeing where I can make adjustments to my work week. And that has been incredibly cool to see that sort of the result that I get there.
Oh, I love that so much because exactly. Okay, this is, guys, listen to this, right? It's not just using this tool to explore your chart more and learn more about human design or yourself or whatever. It's applying the techniques and taking action on them and making it work for your life, right? So that is so awesome. What has been some of the suggestions that ChatGPT has for you? I know that I'm a projector, and so I know that could definitely be probably a good idea for me, honestly.
Yeah, as a projector, you should definitely do that because you're not supposed to work the standard 9 to 5 that we've been programmed to believe is how we work. So when I've been plugging that in and giving the example of my current calendar, I've also been saying if I wanted to reduce my time in the office to 24 hours a week, no more, consider that too, which has been fun because then it's like looking at my calendar, looking at my energy, looking at what my priorities are, and restructuring my time to do more deep work, to take the things that are more admin style tasks and group them into one time in the week, giving much more time for that unplug, recharge. Even as a manifesting generator, I can be completely lit up and keep going and keep working. The trick for me is I can sometimes get into that multitasking, doing too much at once, and then the deep work doesn't really get prioritized. That's something that when I've done that test, I'm getting a lot of that reminder, make time for deep work, make time for deep work, because otherwise I will get in that juggling of all of the things and I won't get outside and touch grass as frequently as I should. So I'm getting a lot of that reminder. Okay, make time. It'll say, I see you have yoga on your schedule several nights a week. How can you spend more time doing things like that? I see you have date night with your husband on your schedule. Could you add an additional date morning with your husband? You know, it's giving recommendations like that based on what it's seeing. It's nice to see this new perspective from a different point of view around how I could best use my energy and prioritize what's important to me.
Yes, I have to ask you because I've seen you doing this on Instagram. I have seen you also using prompts or like your human design with ChatGPT and prompts as a way to craft content or make suggestions for content creation and stuff like that. Can you talk to us about that?
Totally. It's probably my favorite thing. And I have so many members of my community that come in for this part because it's one of the things that I think a lot of us in business struggle with is creating content that's getting the result that we want to get. When I ask women, tell me how you feel about using Instagram, 9 times out of 10, it's a little bit of an eye roll or a sigh that like, I know I have to do it, but it's not like a great time for me. It's not like I'm getting lots of joy out of having to create content. And she was like, somehow you make it seem like you're having fun on social. Like, how are you doing that? And the way that I'm doing that is I'm very much using my human design, specifically my strategy and my profile line in crafting my content plan. And so for me, my strategy is to respond. So what that means is I am going to feel lit up to create content, to create my Instagram posts when I'm responding to something going on in the world. So when I think back to when content was not fun for me is when I tried to sit down on a Monday morning and map out my social plan for the week. And I would feel frustrated, which is my not self theme in human design, frustration. So I'd feel frustrated. I'd be annoyed. I would feel like I had no ideas coming to me. It's because I wasn't in response mode at all. I was trying to create something out of nothing and I was not getting the result. It hadn't occurred to me, even though I at that time was somebody who had studied human design for years, to apply human design to this part of my business. When I had that light bulb moment that I was like trying to work in a way that was not for me, everything changed. And so then it was like, okay, actually what I can do on a Monday morning is script out some talking points, some hook points, some things that I can then be in response to as I work through the week. The other thing I can do is pre-film some of the visuals that I'm going to use when I have that moment of being in response to something that I want to talk about. So all of a sudden, I changed the way I was working and I built out a mini little content library for myself of videos I could use, because that's the way most of us are creating content right now, is either some sort of graphics, some sort of carousel photos, or videos. So for me, it was, okay, I'm going to create this mini video library. I'm going to have some quick talking point, hook style, grab attention points, and then I'm going to be in response throughout the week. And then I noticed, okay, what time of day do I find that I'm feeling that energy to respond and then create? And typically that for me, that fell like mid-afternoon. So I could like get out of my office for a minute, go sit outside and get on my phone and do that creation. And it would take way less time because I felt like I was speaking to something. And also energetically, that attracted way more people because I was showing up differently. So the way that I suggest, and I've actually got a blog post over on weeweestudio.com with 3 prompts that you can use to follow this. What I suggest you do is figure out, okay, what's the best creation flow for me? So for me, it was that getting in that response mode throughout the week. So that flow first, then really dissect your profile lines. That's going to tell you a lot about your personality and how you're going to be best received on social. So I think that's a really important piece too. You can use some prompts around your profile lines to really get good ideas around how to show up. Like for some of us, face to camera or get ready with me style content is great. For others of us, we don't really like energetically do our best in that way. And that's okay. You got to figure out which is for you, and your profile lines can help you with that. Then after you do that, you can use the information you've input thus far to create a 14-day content plan. You're not necessarily going to be following the content plan, verbatim every time, but it's going to give you lots and lots of good ideas. And I like the idea of a 14-day plan because then you've got literally 14 ideas to work from over the course of a couple of weeks in your month to create content in a much more easeful way.
Yes. Oh, I love that. I cannot wait to do that after this interview for sure. Okay, selfishly, quickly, I want to talk a little bit about projectors when it comes to this strategy, because I think projectors are so, what's it called? The authority thing or whatever, that it's very confusing. The wait for the invitation. And especially when you think about showing up on social media. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I definitely do. Okay, so for projectors, your strategy is to wait for the invitation. And depending on what type of projector you are, there's a couple of different types of authority. You could have emotional authority, which means make decisions from your emotional state of being, from your feelings. I'm mentioning that also because so often we hear like, well, if it's not a hell yes, it's a hell no. And that works for sacral authority beings. Projectors are typically not sacral authority beings. They're never sacral authority beings because they don't have that energy center lit up. So for projectors, when they're told, oh, if it's not a hell yes, it's a hell no, projectors are like, that feels really wrong. That's not actually how I operate. And then I need to follow this strategy of waiting for the invitation. I would suggest that the invitation can come from anywhere. So the invitation could be that you see some sort of information out there, you see some art, you're like taking a walk down the street in the city that you live in, and something's going on that really catches your eye, and you're feeling this call to go deeper into that thing. The only time that waiting for the invitation becomes a little bit different from my perspective is when you're engaging with other human beings. And why I'm saying this is because if we go as projectors, you can see really deeply into people. And if we go looking really deeply into people without their invitation to do so, it feels confronting to the person you're engaging with. However, if you're just like moving through the world and you're like, I'm feeling invited into this shop and I want to go explore it. And then I want to see what in this shop resonates for me. That's a very different feeling than I'm sitting down with somebody for coffee and I'm like noticing something going on with them and I want to talk about the stuff that I'm perceiving and they haven't invited me to have that conversation with them. So I always tell my projector people that it doesn't mean you can't do your content creation, get your marketing completed, make sales in your business. You do not have to be invited to do that. You do not have to be invited to reach out to someone to have a collaborative relationship with them. Now, what you might want to be in consideration of is if you are then in a collaborative relationship, notice how deep you're going into their stuff and just notice if they've asked you to do that. That would be a time to really pay attention to that. But for projectors, what I love about projector strategy in terms of social or marketing is you're a natural guide. You're a natural advisor. And while your strategy revolves around that waiting for recognition or an invitation, when you're thinking about creating content or creating marketing tools for your business, as long as you're not like forcing your way into a conversation and you're on the side of being a natural guide and an advisor, you're going to be received really beautifully. So I always tell projectors, give us hot takes, give us your inner wisdom, give us your big ideas, give us your deep reflection. That's the stuff that you have that the rest of us aren't quite as tuned into. And so when you do that, your marketing messaging is going to be really well received.
Oh my goodness. I love that. I was just eating up everything you were saying there. I feel like every time I have a conversation with a human design person, I'm like, oh, realizing things about my projector self. So I get, people get surprised when they hear I'm a projector often because I tend to show up and act sometimes like a manifesting generator. And I think they just don't see me actually taking a break. And I didn't even see it myself until I was like, wait, other people have trouble turning off the computer at 5 p.m. Like, I'm usually stopping working by the end of the day. But yeah, oh my gosh, so funny. And thank you for saying that too, because I think that's what I was getting hung up on when it comes to content creation and marketing. It's like putting yourself out there. But as long as you're putting yourself out there in the stuff that lights you up and that you're excited about and the thoughts that you're having and not pushing that on other people, that's where I have personally always found the rub in my business and life, is where I tend to just push instead of just showing up and welcoming.
Yeah, that is the way. Showing up and welcoming is the way. And even the hot take thing in your marketing messaging or your copy or your social is going to get people thinking. And so sometimes that might feel a little like controversial to you to be putting messaging out like that. But it will show your perfect people that like, oh, you've got a wisdom that I need to get on that. I need to get involved in that. And then they're going to invite you into their world. And then I would just remember this too. Like when we're thinking about like basic things like Instagram, if somebody's following you, they've invited you into their world. That invitation has happened by their commitment to being in your space. So then you can share what you feel called to share because they've showed up and asked you to give it to them. Go for it.
Oh, I love that flip that you literally, that simple thing that you just made for me. I'm like, oh yeah, of course. Oh, and one other thing that popped up for me too when you were just talking before was I've always thought about the invitation being as like coming from other people, but it also sounded like you can be invited by kind of an experience or an idea of some sort. And that really resonated with me because I do feel like all of a sudden I feel like invited into like thinking about this. And I'm like, oh, now I need to share about this and stuff. And I feel like I didn't realize that was a thing either.
Yeah, I am very much someone who feels like in systems like astrology or human design and a lot of these like more woo-woo type systems, that sometimes we can start to lean into like superstition. And so like I have a projector best friend who's like, well, she feels like she can't do anything unless someone has directly extended her an invitation into that particular thing. So she's like, well, I can't create a new product for my business because no one's asked for it yet. I'm like, well, have they not asked for it yet? Like, are they asking you questions that would lead you to creating that product? That's the invitation. And she's like, oh, well, yeah, but I was like, in this like superstitious style of thinking, she's like, but if I do it and no one said, I want that exact thing, will you make it for me? Then is it going to fail? And so I think that's a little bit of like a script we have to flip when it comes to these more woo-woo modalities, is just because the idea is you have to wait for this one particular invite to come through, that can come through in a lot of ways that is not someone literally sending you an email saying, "Hi, will you please create this for me?" Thank you.
Yes. Yeah. Like the energy. I really have felt that before, just like the energy, or just like all of a sudden, like an idea popping up that I have an idea. And then all of a sudden I'm getting like picking up on little nuances from my audience of like, oh, they would like this sort of thing, or just things they say where I'm like, that's an invitation. That's an invitation. And it all comes together collectively to then where I create it. And they're like, yeah, but oh man. Okay. So I just have to tell you this real quick too, before we hop off, because I know it's coming up to time, but I am a, what's it called? Talk it out authority. And so it's hilarious for me with the podcast and stuff. Like I always feel so lit up having these conversations and stuff.
Yeah.
But I love what you said about leaning into your profile lines and your authority and your strategy. Like all three of them make up how you can create content and show up in your business.
Totally. And for projectors, so if you're a projector and you're listening and you're hearing that talk it out piece, talking it out for you is so important. Having someone you can soundboard with. My husband's a projector, so I know this very well, that when he comes to me like at the breakfast table in the morning and is, I need to like work through this idea, he is not asking me to solve it for him. He's not actually asking for my recommendations. He needs to soundboard. He needs to hear himself say it and then have it reflected back to him what he already knows. And so that's one of those very little things that just in personal relationships, business relationships, if you know you're in a room with a projector and it feels like they're doing a lot of soundboarding, it's because that's how they need to hear themselves move through things to make the best decision for themselves.
Okay. And I have to bring this up to you too, lady, because I mean, it is authentic AI. I have been using ChatGPT so much for soundboarding as a talk it out person. Like that's one of my favorite ways. I feel like honestly, when people are like, how do you use ChatGPT in your business on other podcasts and stuff? I'm like, you know, all these different ways. But what's the way that I use it the most is to literally like just talk out anything where I'm like feeling stuck or hesitation. And it's allowing me to be so much more productive, just that one little thing, because I'm not like waffling on a decision. My mom calls me like the most indecisive person ever, but it's not that. It's like that I need to talk her ear off first before I make a decision on something.
Yeah, that's so good. And I, as someone with manifesting generator type, when I'm using ChatGPT, especially in content creation, and I need to be in that response mode, I'll do that brainstorm where I'm like, I'm thinking about this. What do you think about this? And then I get something back and I'm like, this is how I'm responding to this. This is coming up for me. What if I did it this way? And it's literally just me having this tool to get in response mode with through a brainstorm. So I love that's how you're using it. And then that's how I'm doing it for myself.
Oh my goodness. I love this so much. I could totally just talk your ear off for another hour, but I'm going to stop us here because, you know, boundaries. But thank you so much for coming on and sharing your wisdom. Can you share with everyone how they can connect with you and find out more about you? Because I know they'll want to.
Yeah, absolutely. So my education company is We Studio. It's OUI, like the French word yes, and then we, like you and me. So OUIWEstudio.com. You can find me on Instagram at WeWeGirl. And I also have a podcast. It's called The Unschool. I have a whole series on using human design in your business. And a lot of that series also includes prompts for using AI in partnership with human design. So I'd encourage you to go check that out too.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Oh my goodness, my friend. If you made it all the way through that conversation, I know you are geeking out about this as much as I am. And man, it was so fun to chat with Andi about how we can use these tools in our businesses for more than business tasks, right? That's what this podcast is really about. Not only how we can really find more productivity and use these tools in our businesses, but also how we can use them in our lives, because it seriously all works together and it all overlaps, right? So if you nerded out about this conversation as much as I did, please reach out to me on Instagram and send me a message, because literally whenever I find another human design friend, I'm like, yes, please, like, tell me your insights. Tell me how excited you are. I want to connect with you. So send me a message message at Authentic AI for Entrepreneurs or at Feel Good Social. You'll find me at either one of those, and let me know that you listened. Tell me what your human design is and just nerd out with me about it. All right. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week, and I'll catch you next time I got you. Thank you so much for tuning in to Authentic AI for Entrepreneurs, my friend. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your shows.